Chapter 5. Learning what's worth fighting for. Pilk had literally only just got out of sight of Evie and had reached a point along a stream where it was shallow enough to cross, when he heard a loud voice shout, "Stand and defend yourself!" "Oh, what now?" Pilk groaned. "This is feeling like the longest day ever, and it's only halfway to high sun." Nina had shown Pilk a clever way of measuring the time of day, using the shadows of the sun, so he knew it was roughly mid-morning. "Go no further," said a stocky Stone Age man, with not much hair on his head, but a magnificent handlebar moustache. "This ford is mine to defend." The man wore pants tied at the waist, which Pilk had never seen before, and he was stood on some rocks in the middle of the stream, with his fists held up in front of him like a prize fighter. He looked very fit, and he bounced on his toes the way that boxers do in a boxing ring. Pilk was surprised that he didn't slip off the rocks and fall into the water, but he seemed pretty sure on his feet. "I'm sorry," Pilk said. "I just need to cross the stream to get to the lagoon to find some more yellow fruit for some friends of mine." It instantly occurred to him that neither Toother nor Evil Evie were actually his friends. He was simply getting the fruit to save his skin. "You shall not pass until you have done battle for the privilege," the man announced. "For I am Ford, Forest Fighter Ford, and it is my duty to defend the forest from villains and ruffians." "Well, is it absolutely necessary for you to defend this part of the forest?" Pilk said. "It's just that I'm kind of busy right now, and this is the best place to cross the stream." "Ah, I believe you are afraid to take me on," said Ford. "I trust you have heard of my many conquests." Not really," Pilk replied. "I've never actually seen you before." "Pah!" Ford thundered. "I have beaten many men, and I have fought many ravenous beasts, and I have defeated them all." "Well, I've never heard of you," Pilk said, unimpressed. "Although news does tend to spread slowly around here. I mean, it is the Stone Age after all." "Well, I am here now, and I claim this ford as my ford, and I shall call it—" "Let me guess," said Pilk. "Ford's Ford?" Yes, actually," Ford said, looking a little disappointed. "I wanted to say that." "Look, I haven't got time for this, to be honest, Ford," Pilk said. "Isn't there another way that we can settle this?" "What do you mean?" Ford inquired. "Well, how about rock, little rock, big rock?" Pilk suggested. Paper and scissors, of course, hadn't been invented yet. "That is a game for children," Ford snorted, putting his fists up again and hopping about on his toes. "Men do not defend their honour with childish games." "Well, I'm not a man, exactly. Not yet, at least," Pilk said. "But how do men defend their honour? As if I didn't know." "Well, they fight, of course," Ford exclaimed proudly. "Do you do a lot of this kind of thing?" Pilk asked. "Fighting?" "Why, yes," Ford said. "Occasionally." "How occasionally?" asked Pilk. "Every day," Ford trumpeted. "What?" Pilk cried. "You pick a fight every day? What have you got to fight about?" Ford put down his fists, and he stopped bouncing, and stroked his chin and thought for a moment. And then he said, "Anything, everything. I have to fight to survive." "Why do you have to fight to survive?" Pilk said. "I find it's best to avoid fights, at least if I can help it. I seem to get by pretty well using my wits, and being generally kind." "Not where I'm from," Ford said. "I was the youngest in a large family in a tribe of warriors. Even the women were fierce fighters, and the little ones would sneak up and bite your ankles if you were not careful." "Oh my goodness," Pilk cried. "That sounds awful." "Yes, it was," Ford said. But I learned that if I wanted something, I had to fight for it. And even though I wasn't the tallest or the strongest, I became a skillful fist fighter, able to defend myself against any opponent, large or small. Pilk began to understand why Ford was the person that he was. He had a sense that he was a good man at heart, but had had to become fierce and strong to defend himself in the same way that Pilk had had to become smart to protect himself. Yeah, I think I understand, Pilk said. But you don't have to go round picking fights. What else is there to do? Said Ford. Life is not worth anything if there is nothing to fight for. Pilk, in a funny sort of way, agreed with him, but he couldn't help feeling that there was an easier way to go through life than finding people to fight with. He decided that despite all of his bravery and his bravado, he actually quite liked Ford. They were both just survivors, finding different ways to get through the day. So I don't suppose you'd be interested in this then, Pilk said, and he pulled the beautiful golden fruit out of his bag, the one that he'd managed to defend, at least till now. By the stars, Ford said, what do you hold there, my dear young man? I can't believe I'm doing this, Pilk said to himself. It's a yellow fruit I found down by the lagoon, he told Ford. What wonders are these? Said Ford. I have travelled near and far, but never have I seen such a thing as this. What does it do? It doesn't do anything, Pilk replied. You just eat it. And when you do, you will realise that you have never tasted anything as good in your whole life. It's the most delicious, sweetest, tastiest fruit in the world. But why have I never seen such a thing before? Ford said. Well, perhaps because you're busy fighting all the time, Pilk suggested, shrugging his shoulders and holding up his hands. You could have a point there, young man, Ford admitted. I am rather focused on fighting. I'm training for fighting. There doesn't seem to be much time to enjoy the finer things in life. Well, how about this? Pilk chirped. What say you let me pass and I'll bring you back a fruit? I might as well. I don't think one more would make any difference. You mean you would give one to me? Ford said, looking amazed. For nothing? For free? Without fighting for? Yeah, why not? Said Pilk. You don't have to fight for everything, you know. Sometimes it's better just to ask, nicely. You should try it sometime. Ford looked stunned, and he seemed to be having trouble getting his head around the concept of simple kindness. His face went through all kinds of contortions, and then, to Pilk's utter surprise, a tear formed in one of his eyes and rolled down his cheek. Are you all right, Ford? Pilk asked, concerned. You don't look too well. My dear friend, Ford said, putting his hand out in front of him in a fist. Pilk wasn't quite sure what was going to happen next. Are we going to fight after all? He said. Just put your fist out in front, like this, Ford said sternly. Pilk did as he was told, and he closed his eyes and expected to feel a heavy thump on his head. But instead, he felt a gentle tap as Ford bumped his fist gently against his own. There you go, said Ford kindly. I think that is what you might describe as a kind gesture. And it is definitely a first time for me. Whatever next, flower arranging? Oh, is that it then? Pilk said, a little taken aback. So, we're agreed? I'll go and get you a fruit? Yes, if your word is indeed your bond, Ford replied. And it's not something that I have to fight you for? Pilk asked. Of course not, Ford said. I believe that we may have become friends here today, and sometimes I seem to have learned friends are worth fighting for. And without warning, Ford grabbed Pilk's hand and before he realised what was happening, he had been whisked from one bank to the other, further along the path towards the lagoon. "Good fortune on your way, noble lad," Ford called out after Pilk. "Oh, same to you," Pilk shouted back. It just sounded like the right thing to say at that moment. "And I shall meet you on the highway on your return," Ford shouted, sounding a little more distant now. "And remember, if you ever need a friend to fight for you—" "Ford will be there to fight for me," Pilk shouted back. "Ha ha! Yes, exactly," Ford bellowed loudly. "I wanted to say that." "No problem. I get it," Pilk shouted back. "And between you and me, I think you'd be great at flower arranging." "What?" Pilk heard Ford explode somewhere in the distance behind him as he continued on his quest.